today manage its affairs so differently.
No, how do you mean?
Well, you see, today, if a young man has the gift of a poet, a dramatist, a novelist, he has only to set to work. And then eventually his writings must find their own way into the literary marketplace. But it was not so in 18th century Europe. Gifted people, therefore, had to enlist the interest of some member of the nobility, the aristocracy, the monarchy. One had to be sponsored.
I see.
People also, at time to time, had to be protected.
Really? Why was that?
Well, you see, sir, at that time there was no official freedom of the press. One could suffer painfully if one's writings displeased the authorities or the church. At all events, in 1711, I was 17 at the time, I returned home to face immediate opposition from my father, who, as I've suggested, felt that my literary efforts were misguided. The Abbé de Châteauneuf, however, was somewhat wiser than my father. And I am also very grateful to him for introducing me to the religious philosophy of deism, because I feel that...
Pardon me, sir, for interrupting you, but I am puzzled. Now, Father de Châteauneuf was, of course, a Catholic priest.
Oh, certainement.
But there's a very wide gulf between Catholicism and deism.
How sensitive you two have perceived this. And please don't say touché. That tiresome response of the conversationally helpless was a bore even in my time.
All right. In any event, I just wanted to explain to our viewers that a deist believes in a god, but not so much in a formal religion.
But to continue, in 18th century Europe, there was a great deal of intellectual ferment. The religious certainties of the 16th, 15th, and even earlier centuries were being seriously called in question by many intellectuals, including some who nominally remained loyal to the church.
I see. Well, sir, on that subject, I'm sure Dr. Luther will want to have a word with you when he comes out.
Oh, yes, I would appreciate it if you would hurry along to that. I can hardly wait to talk to the man.
I'm sure he returns the compliment. But perhaps we should seat you two on opposite sides of the table.
Oh, nonsense. Martin Luther and I could never be totally at odds. One may admire his courage, his wit, his great intelligence. And then, of course, we share the distinction of being, shall we say, graduates of the Catholic Church. And, of course, we were both reformers.
Yes, that's true. Well, we'll get right to that then. During the lifetime of Martin Luther, the Italian Renaissance was blossoming, as you of course know. The New World, the American continent, had been discovered by Columbus in 1492. It was the age of great scholars like the humanist Erasmus, and reason itself was beginning to be more honored. But Luther was no disinterested or urbane scholar. He took no favorable interest at all in these philosophical developments, nor in the geographical discoveries. He was one of the most single-minded and emotional men in all history. His whole life, his whole adult life, was devoted to the pursuit of his religious reforms. Hopefully, we will learn more of his wholeness, greatness, and fullness this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to introduce Martin Luther. Good evening, Dr. Luther. We are very pleased to welcome you.
Thank you, sir. So you think we will have some grounds for agreement, Voltaire? Huh?
Oh, I am sure, dear Dr. Luther, we will have much to agree on. You would no doubt join me in lamenting the fact that in the Paris of my day, Protestants were almost literally outlaws. The wife of a Protestant was regarded simply as a concubine. And so it logically follows that her children were regarded as illegitimate, which in turn meant they could not inherit property.
I'm very glad to have you to disclose these facts, Monsieur Voltaire. If I were to vouchsafe the same information, I would be accused of prejudice, if not outright falsehood. But I could tell you far worse stories. I assure you, stories of bloody crimes and atrocities.
Yes, I'm sure you could. But, of course, the same stories could be told of the Protestant forces, could they not?
Well, Dr. Luther, a few quick questions of fact, all right? You were born in the year...
1483 in Eisleben in Germany.
Yes.
My mother and father were of simple peasant stock, though my father prospered by work in the mines. He owned some small foundries.
Luther, many people in your time believed in witches and sinister spirits. Did you?
Oh, certainly. Prussia was full of witches and devils. In my native country, on the top of a high mountain called the Pugelsberg, there was a lake. If a stone were thrown into it, a tempest would rise over the whole region because the waters was the home of captive demons.
I rest my case.
Dr. Luther, it's said of you that as a young person you suffered from alternating moods of exaltation and deep depression. Is this true?